The loudest move is silence, not absence, not fear. A blade kept in the sheath because the room already understands what it can do. We live inside a siren, notifications, opinions, declarations, each word a breadcrumb others use to track us. We call it authenticity. Power calls it leakage. Every explanation you offer becomes a handle, every confession, a map. Machiavelli learned this when words could cost a city. We forget it when words only cost a click. Ask yourself, who gains when you explain? The anxious speak to soothe themselves, the powerful wait. Silence is not emptiness, it is pressure. It expands in the mind of the listener, forcing them to reveal what you refuse to spend. Where speech fixes you in place, silence leaves you fluid. Where disclosure binds, restraint negotiates with time. This is a discipline, not a mood. It gathers information before it gives it. It builds authority by scarcity. It keeps doors unmarked so you may choose which to open. The world will demand clarity now. You will learn the cost of giving it now. If you have ever lost leverage by talking too soon, you already know the lesson. If you have ever watched a quiet person tilt a room without raising their voice, you have seen the method. Say less, see more. Hold your frame. By the end of this, you won't just understand strategic silence, you'll know how to wield it. Machiavelli lived in a world where a sentence could end a life. Every court had ears, every word an informant. To survive, he learned what modern people forget. Speech is exposure, silence is armor. In Renaissance Italy, rumors moved faster than armies. A careless phrase at a dinner table could travel through servants, reach a rival duke, and return as exile. Power belonged not to those who spoke best, but to those who withheld longest. He watched men rise and fall by their tongues, and he wrote what he saw. Men judge more by the eye than by the hand. What they see becomes their truth, until you decide what to let them see. 5 centuries later, our courts are digital. We post what we think, fear, desire. We trade mystery for engagement, restraint for reach. We perform transparency as if visibility were virtue. Yet visibility without control is exposure, not strength. The ruler who revealed his strategy lost his city. The modern thinker who reveals his mind loses his edge. Silence, used well, reshapes perception. The one who pauses in a meeting commands the tempo. The leader who speaks last defines what makes sense. The person who listens through discomfort turns a conversation into reconnaissance. Every unsent message is data retained. Every word unspoken keeps you mobile in the field of perception. We imagine honesty as saying everything we feel. Machiavelli imagined honesty as acting in alignment with truth, not speaking it aloud to those who would weaponize it. He understood that appearances are not lies, they are layers. You control them or others will. The world will tell you that clarity builds trust. He would tell you that clarity given too soon builds cages. Appearances are the stage. Reality is the backstage plan. And the first rule of power is simple. Never confuse the two. Every word is a thread that ties you to an outcome. Speak too soon, and you weave a net that traps you in your own declarations. We call it honesty, the world calls it predictability. Once you explain your plan, your motives, your fears, the game begins without your permission. Others adjust, adapt, prepare their counters. And while you are still talking, they are already moving. Machiavelli warned of this centuries ago. When you announce your intentions, you surrender flexibility. When you justify yourself, you surrender authority. Each explanation narrows your freedom, turning possibilities into expectations. Look at modern life. The entrepreneur who shares every idea before it's built invites pressure and scrutiny instead of progress. The negotiator who over-explains their reasoning maps their own weaknesses for the other side. The leader who answers every criticism legitimizes even the smallest attack. The cost isn't only external, it's internal. The more we explain, the more we convince ourselves that understanding equals control. But speech rarely changes perception as much as silence does. People rarely remember your logic. They remember your presence. And presence doesn't require proof. Watch those who hold real influence. They speak in short, deliberate bursts, then disappear into quiet. Their words land like stones in water, creating ripples long after the sound fades. They don't defend. They don't over-clarify. They let uncertainty work for them. Explanation is a reflex of insecurity. Restraint is the language of confidence. Because once you explain yourself, you stop being the mystery. And when the mystery dies, so does your leverage. Silence isn't the absence of communication. It's a structure, built, reinforced, and directed with intention. Machiavelli understood this architecture long before psychology gave it names. He used silence as both weapon and shield, shaping perception without uttering a word. The first pillar is information gathering. The fool speaks to fill the void. The wise allow the void to speak back. In every conversation, the one who speaks least learns the most. When you stay quiet, others reveal themselves, their fears, motives, alliances. Your silence becomes a mirror, and people, desperate for validation, begin to talk to their own reflection. The second pillar is authority through restraint. Humans mistake calm for control. When you withhold your reaction, they assume depth. That pause before your reply, the one that makes them wonder what you're thinking, isn't hesitation. It's gravity. You don't need to prove intelligence when others are busy trying to interpret it. The less you explain, the more they project. And most people project upward. The third pillar is ambiguity as strategy. Clarity comforts others but confines you. Ambiguity keeps doors open, keeps enemies guessing, keeps allies curious. Say just enough to be understood, never enough to be defined. When people can't label you, they can't limit you. These three forms of silence, observant, authoritative, and ambiguous, work together like gears in a hidden mechanism. They turn unseen, yet they move everything around them. Mastering them doesn't mean saying nothing. It means knowing that every silence says something and deciding exactly what it should say. Machiavelli's princes survived because they knew when speech was suicide. Today, survival looks different, but the principle endures. In a world addicted to noise, silence is the only voice that cannot be misquoted. Silence unsettles people because it forces them to meet themselves. Most conversations are performances meant to keep that mirror covered. When you refuse to fill the space, they begin to project. This is the first psychological effect: projection. Your quiet becomes their canvas. They paint it with assumptions, fears, and desires. They decide who you are, and often they decide in your favor. When you stop explaining, others start imagining, and imagination, once engaged, binds them stronger than any argument. The second effect is dominance. The person who speaks least controls the rhythm. Every pause becomes a test of composure. The one who breaks it reveals weakness. The one who holds it gains ground. Negotiators know this instinctively. After an offer, they stay silent. The silence grows heavy. The other side rushes to fill it with concessions. In human dynamics, silence establishes hierarchy without a single overt act. The stillest person becomes the center of gravity. The third effect is mystique. People fear what they cannot fully read. They respect what they cannot predict. Mystery magnifies presence. The less you reveal, the more they assume your depth. Leaders who speak sparingly seem wiser. Lovers who hold something back seem more magnetic. We chase what hides. We undervalue what explains itself. Silence also recalibrates emotion. When tempers rise, the quiet person appears composed, rational, unshakable. When anxiety spreads, the silent presence anchors the room. People trust stillness because it signals control and crave proximity to whoever controls the storm. Machiavelli would recognize this psychology instantly. He studied how perception bends around power and how power bends around silence. To master others, you must first master the discomfort of being misunderstood, because silence always speaks. But only the disciplined decide what it says. Modern culture worships openness like a religion. Be authentic, they say. Share everything. But total transparency isn't truth. It's exposure. We mistake visibility for connection. We equate disclosure with trust. Yet what we reveal easily, others value lightly. Machiavelli would call this naive. He warned that promises once spoken become chains. Speech binds you to yesterday's version of yourself. Silence keeps you free to evolve. Transparency feels virtuous because it feels safe, until it isn't. The leader who explains every decision soon must explain every delay. The friend who shares every emotion becomes predictable, not intimate. The lover who reveals everything too soon kills the tension that keeps affection alive. Openness gives comfort. Mystery gives meaning. This is the transparency trap. The more you reveal, the less power you hold over your own story. Every post, every confession, every explanation fixes your identity in someone else's mind. Change after that, and they call you inconsistent. Hold back, and they call you cold. But restraint isn't deception. Privacy is not secrecy. Secrecy hides what others deserve to know. Privacy protects what others have not earned the right to see. Strategic silence preserves that line. It allows you to share what builds trust without surrendering what builds strength. We live in an age where people bleed attention for validation. But attention fades. Respect lasts. And respect is born not from exposure, but from control. The quiet person is not hiding. They are guarding the currency of influence and spending it only when the return is worth it. Every exchange is a contest for control of the frame. Who leads, who follows, who reacts. These roles are decided not by volume, but by rhythm. He who controls the rhythm controls the room. The first rule, information is leverage. Whoever speaks first reveals their hand. The quiet one observes patterns, measures tone, listens for hesitation. While others rush to impress, the listener collects intelligence. When they finally speak, their words land with disproportionate weight because they come from knowledge, not noise. The second rule, questions dominate statements. A statement ends a path, a question opens one. When you ask, you lead. When you answer, you follow. Machiavelli would recognize this instinct. The fox learns more by watching the lion roar than by roaring back. The third rule, scarcity increases value. Words like currency inflate with overuse. The person who comments on everything becomes background sound. The one who speaks rarely turns each phrase into an event. That's why a short message from a powerful voice can silence 1,000 explanations. The fourth rule, silence reframes tension. In meetings, negotiations, or conflicts, silence breaks the momentum of reaction. It forces others to fill the void, often revealing insecurity or overcommitment. He who masters the pause manipulates tempo. Watch any group and you'll see it. The anxious explain. The confident edit. The insecure rush to speak first. The powerful wait until speaking becomes unavoidable. Control of dialogue is not about domination. It's about patience. You don't need to outtalk anyone, you just need to outwait them. Because in the end, conversations don't belong to the one who speaks the most. They belong to the one whose silence everyone else tries to interpret. Strategic silence is not a philosophy to admire. It's a skill to practice. Power belongs to those who can hold their tongue while others lose theirs. In professional life, start by delaying your responses. Before offering opinions, ask questions that expose the map of the room. Let colleagues speak first. They will tell you their fears disguised as facts. When you do respond, be concise. Answer with conclusions, not process. Mystique outperforms transparency every time. In negotiations, present your terms, then stop talking. The silence that follows is your ally. The longer it lasts, the louder it speaks. Confidence, finality, control. Most people crumble under that quiet pressure. They fill it with discounts, compromises, and apologies you never had to request. In leadership, explain less and execute more. When you must speak, speak with precision. Not to justify, but to direct. Clarity in purpose, restraint in detail. Let others project wisdom where you withhold explanation. In relationships, resist the impulse to narrate your every emotion. Mystery is oxygen for attraction. Let others earn access to your inner world. That slow discovery builds value. Silence can hold tenderness when words would only dilute it. In digital life, practice selective absence. Post less, observe more. Every gap in your feed raises curiosity, and curiosity is attention. Noise is forgettable. Stillness, memorable. Strategic silence is not withdrawal. It is an assertion of control in an age of compulsion. To stay quiet on purpose is to choose awareness over impulse, depth over display. You don't owe the world your every thought. You owe yourself the power that comes from keeping some of them unspoken. Here lies the contradiction that confuses the modern mind. By speaking less, you shape more. In a world addicted to volume, silence feels subversive. We equate noise with relevance, expression with existence. But influence has never belonged to the loudest. It belongs to the one who decides when the world gets to hear their voice. This is the paradox. Each word you withhold increases the gravity of the next one you choose to speak. Restraint is not absence, it's concentration. Your silence compresses meaning until your words arrive with the weight of inevitability. History remembers this pattern. The generals who paused before declaring war. The philosophers who wrote once, then echoed for centuries. The leaders whose calm became contagious when chaos ruled. They didn't talk more. They calibrated every utterance until speech became an event. Machiavelli saw it clearly. The fewer your declarations, the greater their reach. Power expands in inverse proportion to explanation. You appear confident not because you say everything, but because you need to say nothing. When you stop chasing understanding, others chase yours. When you stop proving your worth, others start assuming it. Influence grows in the silence between sentences. That's the final secret. The paradox isn't about communication, it's about control. Those who master silence don't withdraw from life. They orchestrate it. They know that true persuasion doesn't shout, it pulls. It invites reflection instead of reaction. And in that stillness, perception rearranges itself around you. Not because you demanded attention, but because you became the quiet that everyone else cannot ignore. It begins and ends with the same truth. The loudest move is silence. Every word you didn't say still works for you in the minds of others. Rewritten, reinterpreted, remembered. That's the secret most never learn. Control doesn't come from dominating the room, but from shaping what lingers after you've left it. In a noisy age, silence feels radical. It draws curiosity, commands respect, and restores power to intention. You've seen it now, the architecture, the psychology, the paradox. Speech may express you, but silence defines you. So pause before you explain. Hold the thought before you share. Let your restraint build gravity until your presence speaks louder than any declaration. Say less, win more. And if this message resonated with you, if you're ready to master the unseen language of power and perception, subscribe to Alchemia of Mind, because here every week, we don't just talk about transformation, we learn to embody it.